Captain Jake Martinez stood at the viewing window of the Terra Shield station, watching the stars that had remained peaceful for over 200 years. The orbital defense platform hung in space like a metal guardian, protecting Earth and its colonies from any threats that might come from the dark between worlds. Jake had commanded this station for 5 years, and in all that time, the biggest excitement had been turning away lost merchant ships and the occasional diplomat. The communication console buzzed, and Lisa Brooks looked up from her station. She was young for a communications officer, barely 30, with short brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Captain, we have an incoming transmission from the consortium fleet at the edge of our space." Jake sighed and walked over to his command chair. He already knew what this would be about. The war between the Galactic Consortium and the Vex Empire had been raging for decades, and both sides kept trying to drag Earth into their conflict. "Put it through, Lisa!" The main screen flickered to life, showing the scaled face of Admiral Kethra, a Saurian whose people had been fighting the Vex for longer than humans had been traveling between stars. The alien's golden eyes showed the weariness of someone who had seen too much death and destruction. "Captain Martinez," the Admiral began, his voice carrying the weight of desperation. "My people are dying. Entire worlds have fallen to the Vex Empire. We need Earth's help. Your technology, your ships, your people. Join us, and together we can end this war." Jake had heard this speech before, from both sides. The Vex had made similar offers, though theirs usually came with more threats than requests. "Admiral Kethra, you know our position. Earth remains neutral in this conflict. We have signed the Terran Neutrality Accords, and we will honor them. I'm sorry, but we cannot help you." The Saurian's shoulders sagged slightly. "Captain, the Vex are not like other enemies. They do not seek conquest or resources. They seek to destroy everything that is not them. Your neutrality will not protect you forever." "Perhaps not," Jake replied, keeping his voice steady and professional. "But it has protected us for 2 centuries. We will not abandon it now." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in quiet tension. Ryan Clark, the station's tactical analyst, looked up from his console, where he had been monitoring the conversation. Ryan was older than most of the crew, a veteran of Earth's early space exploration who had seen the galaxy change from a place of wonder to one of constant war. "Captain, I'm reading massive fleet movements in the outer sectors," Ryan reported. "Both Consortium and Vex forces are moving toward the Kepler system. That's only 3 jumps away from our neutral zone." Jake frowned. The neutral zone around Earth's solar system extended for 50 light years in all directions, agreed upon by both sides in the Galactic War. It was supposed to be a safe space where neither side would bring their conflict. "How many ships?" "Hard to say for certain, but sensors are picking up at least 200 vessels on each side. This could be the biggest battle of the war so far." On the surface of Earth, far below the orbital station, Dr. Amy Rodriguez was having problems of her own. The research facility at Luna City had been her home for the past 3 years, where she studied the alien technology fragments that sometimes drifted into Earth's space. These pieces of broken ships and scattered equipment told stories of battles fought in distant systems, of technologies beyond human understanding. Her assistant, Ben Thompson, was a young engineer who had joined her team fresh from the Mars Technical Institute. He had a talent for understanding alien systems that surprised even Amy, and his enthusiasm for the work made even the longest research sessions enjoyable. "Dr. Rodriguez, you need to see this," Ben called from across the laboratory. His voice carried an excitement that made Amy look up from her own work immediately. She walked over to his station, where he had been analyzing a piece of debris that had been collected from the edge of the neutral zone just days before. The fragment was small, no bigger than a human hand, but it pulsed with an energy that their instruments could barely measure. "What am I looking at, Ben?" Amy asked, studying the readings on his screen. "This energy signature is unlike anything we've cataloged before," Ben explained, his fingers dancing over the controls to bring up comparison charts. It's not consortium technology, and it's definitely not Vex. This is something new, something we've never seen. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. In their years of studying alien technology, they had learned to identify the distinct characteristics of every known species in the galaxy. If this was something new, it could mean that another player had entered the Galactic War, or worse, that one of the existing sides had developed weapons beyond anything previously known. "Run a full-spectrum analysis," she ordered. "I want to know everything about this fragment, where it came from, what it was part of, and what kind of energy it uses." As Ben worked, Amy sent a message to Captain Martinez on the Terra Shield station. If new weapons were being developed somewhere in the galaxy, Earth's defenders needed to know about it. Their neutrality depended on being able to defend themselves against any threat, and an unknown technology could upset the careful balance that had kept Earth safe for so long. Back on the orbital station, Jake read Amy's report with growing concern. The war between the Consortium and the Vex had been relatively stable for years, each side knowing the capabilities of the other. New weapons could change everything, and not necessarily in ways that would respect Earth's neutrality. "Lisa, send a message to Admiral Sullivan on Earth," Jake ordered. "Request permission to reinforce our defenses. If there are new weapons in play, we need to be ready for anything." Admiral Kate Sullivan was the head of Earth's Space Defense Force, a woman who had spent her entire career preparing for threats that she hoped would never come. She had supported the neutrality accords, but she had also made sure that Earth would be ready to defend itself if neutrality failed. Her response came back within hours, and it was not what Jake had hoped to hear. "Defense Station Terra Shield. Maintain current alert status. Earth's position remains unchanged. We will not escalate tensions by increasing our military presence. Continue monitoring and report any changes." Jake stared at the message, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. His job was to protect Earth and its colonies, but he was being told to do so with one hand tied behind his back. The politicians on Earth still believed that neutrality was their best protection, but Jake had spent years watching the galaxy tear itself apart. He knew that sometimes neutrality was not enough. Ryan appeared at his shoulder holding a data pad with the latest sensor readings. "Captain, those fleet movements I mentioned earlier, they're accelerating. Both sides are pouring ships into the Kepler system. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big." Jake nodded, his eyes still fixed on the stars beyond the viewing window. Somewhere out there in the darkness between worlds, forces were gathering that could change the galaxy forever. Earth had remained safe by staying out of the war, but Jake had a growing feeling that the war was about to come to them, whether they wanted it or not. The neutral zone that had protected them for so long suddenly felt very small, and the enemy, fleets gathering just beyond it, felt very close. Change was coming to Earth, whether its people were ready for it or not. 3 months had passed since the massive fleet movements near the Kepler system, and life on Earth had returned to its normal, peaceful rhythm. Captain Jake Martinez continued his routine patrols around the Terra Shield station. Dr. Amy Rodriguez kept analyzing alien technology fragments, and the politicians in Earth's capital continued to believe that neutrality would protect them forever. That belief died on a Tuesday morning when the alarm started screaming across Luna City. Ben Thompson was working late in the research laboratory, running final tests on the mysterious energy fragment they had discovered months earlier. The facility was quiet at this hour, with most of the staff gone home to their families. Amy had left just an hour before, promising to review his findings in the morning. The first explosion shook the entire facility, throwing Ben to the floor and sending equipment crashing around him. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power failed, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Ben struggled to his feet, his ears ringing from the blast, trying to understand what was happening. Through the laboratory windows, he could see shapes moving in the darkness outside. They were not human shapes. The figures were tall and thin, covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their movements were quick and precise, like predators that had found easy prey. Ben grabbed the emergency communicator from his desk and tried to call for help, but all he got was static. The attackers had jammed all communications. He was alone with whatever these creatures were, and they were coming for the research facility. The Vex soldiers moved through Luna City like shadows of death. They had slipped past Earth's outer defenses, using stealth technology that made their ship invisible to human sensors. The Void Reaper was a special vessel designed for exactly this kind of mission, striking fast and disappearing before anyone could respond. The Vex were not interested in conquering Luna City or stealing human technology. They had come with a specific mission, and they would complete it no matter how many humans they had to kill in the process. Their leader, Commander Zartek, had his orders directly from the Vex High Command. Find the traitor and eliminate her. Dr. Elena Vasquez had once been a brilliant scientist working for the Galactic Consortium, developing new weapons to fight the Vex Empire. But she had grown sick of the war, tired of creating tools for killing, and she had defected to Earth seeking peace. For 3 years, she had worked quietly at Luna City, helping human scientists understand alien technology while trying to forget the horrors she had helped create. The Vex had not forgotten her. They had been hunting her across the galaxy, and now they had found her. Ben pressed himself against the wall as he heard footsteps in the corridor outside the laboratory. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, making everything look twisted and wrong. He could hear voices speaking in a language that sounded like breaking glass mixed with static. The door to the laboratory exploded inward, and 3 Vex soldiers entered. Their faces were hidden behind masks that looked like skulls, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They looked around the room with cold efficiency, checking every corner and every hiding place. Ben held his breath and tried to make himself invisible, but it was no use. One of the soldiers spotted him and raised its weapon. Ben closed his eyes and waited for the end, but the killing shot never came. Instead, he heard the soldier speak in broken English. "Where is the scientist Vasquez?" Ben opened his eyes, confused. These creatures had traveled across the galaxy and attacked Luna City just to find one person? "I don't know," he stammered. "She's not here. She went home hours ago." The soldier moved closer, its weapon still pointed at Ben's chest. "You lie. The traitor works in this facility. We have tracked her here." Before Ben could answer, they heard more explosions from other parts of the facility. The Vex were methodically searching every room, every laboratory, every office. They were killing anyone who got in their way, but they were not randomly destroying everything. This was a surgical strike with a specific target. Dr. Elena Vasquez was in her small apartment, on the other side of Luna City when she heard the explosions. She had been trying to sleep, but nightmares about her past kept waking her up. She had dreamed of the weapons she had created, of the planets that had died because of her research, of the faces of the people she had failed to save. When the alarms started, she knew immediately what was happening. The Vex had found her. Elena had been preparing for this day for 3 years. She had known that her past would eventually catch up with her, that the Vex would never stop hunting their enemies. She grabbed the emergency bag she kept hidden under her bed, containing everything she would need to disappear again. But as she reached her apartment door, she realized it was too late. Vex soldiers were already in the hallway, moving from door to door, killing everyone they found. Elena could hear the screams of her neighbors, people who had done nothing wrong except live in the same building as a former consortium scientist. She thought about running, about trying to escape through the service tunnels that connected the buildings of Luna City. But she knew that more innocent people would die while the Vex searched for her. Her neighbors, her colleagues, people who had welcomed her to Earth and given her a chance to start over. Elena made her choice. She opened her apartment door and stepped into the hallway. I am Elena Vasquez, she called out in the Vex language, her voice steady despite her fear. I am the one you seek. Let the others live. Commander Zartek turned to face her, his skull mask reflecting the emergency lighting. The traitor reveals herself. Good. Your death will serve as a lesson to others who would betray the Empire. Elena stood straight and faced her executioner with dignity. I betrayed no one. I chose peace over war. I chose life over death. That is not betrayal. That is evolution. The Vex commander raised his weapon, but before he could fire, more explosions rocked the facility. These were different from the precise charges the Vex had been using. These were defensive explosions, the kind used to seal blast doors and protect important areas. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had made it back to the facility when she heard about the attack. She had been driving home when the emergency alert started broadcasting, and she had immediately turned around and raced back to Luna City. She could not reach Ben or Elena by communicator, and she feared the worst. Amy had managed to reach the facility's emergency bunker where she activated the automated defense systems. She could not fight the attackers directly, but she could make their mission more difficult. The blast doors would slow them down, and the security cameras would record everything for whoever survived to find later. On her screens, she watched in horror as the Vex soldiers executed the facility's staff one by one. These were not random killings. The attackers were looking for someone specific, and they were willing to murder innocent people to find their target. When she saw Elena step into the hallway and surrender herself, Amy understood what was happening. The Vex had not come to Luna City to attack Earth. They had come for Elena, and everyone else was just collateral damage. Amy activated the facility's emergency beacon, sending a distress signal that would reach the Terra Shield station within minutes. She also began uploading all of their research data to Earth's central archives. If she was going to die, at least their work would survive. The signal reached Captain Martinez just as he was finishing his morning briefing. Lisa Brooks looked up from her communications console with an expression of shock and disbelief. Captain, we're receiving an emergency signal from Luna City. They're under attack. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. Luna City was in Earth's solar system, well within the neutral zone. No one was supposed to attack targets inside the zone. It was the one rule that both sides in the Galactic War had always respected. Red alert, Jake ordered. All hands to battle stations. Ryan, I want full sensor sweeps of the entire system. Find out who's attacking Luna City and how they got past our defenses. As the Terra Shield station came alive with activity, Jake sent an urgent message to Admiral Sullivan on Earth. The neutral zone had been violated. Earth was under attack. Everything was about to change. On Luna City, Commander Zartek completed his mission. Elena Vasquez was dead, along with 47 other humans who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Vex soldiers prepared to leave, their stealth ship waiting to carry them back into the darkness between stars. But before they departed, Zartek left one final message, broadcasting it on all human communication frequencies. Earth harbors enemies of the Vex Empire. Neutral worlds that protect our enemies will be treated as enemies. This is your only warning. The message reached every human settlement in the solar system. It reached the politicians who had believed in neutrality, the military officers who had prepared for war, and the ordinary citizens who had thought they were safe. Earth's neutrality was over. The war had come to them. The emergency session of Earth's World Council lasted 18 hours. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every settlement in human space gathered in the Great Hall in Geneva to decide humanity's response to the attack on Luna City. The debate was fierce, with some still arguing for diplomatic solutions while others demanded immediate military action. President Danny Morrison stood at the central podium, looking out at the faces of Earth's leaders. He was a man who had spent his entire political career working for peace, negotiating treaties and avoiding conflicts. But the images from Luna City had changed everything. He had seen the security footage of Ben Thompson's death, of Elena Vasquez's execution, of 47 innocent people murdered by alien soldiers who had violated every principle of civilized warfare. The Vex Empire has made their position clear, Morrison said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. They do not recognize our neutrality. They see our refusal to choose sides as weakness to be exploited. They have killed our people, on our own soil, and they have threatened to do it again. General Chris Taylor sat in the military advisory section, studying the tactical reports from Luna City. He was a soldier who had spent decades preparing for a war that everyone hoped would never come. The Vex attack had been surgical and precise, designed to send a message rather than cause maximum damage, but that precision told him something important about their capabilities and their intentions. "Mr. President," General Taylor said when called upon to speak. "The attack on Luna City was a test. The Vex wanted to see how we would respond to provocation. If we do nothing, they will see it as permission to continue attacking our settlements. If we respond with insufficient force, they will escalate until we are forced to surrender or fight a war on their terms." Ambassador Sandra White represented Earth's diplomatic corps, the men and women who had spent 2 centuries maintaining the delicate balance that kept Earth neutral. She understood better than anyone how fragile that balance had been, and how completely it had been shattered by the Vex attack. "General Taylor is correct," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of failed hopes. "Our neutrality was based on mutual respect for our position. The Vex have demonstrated that they do not respect anything except strength. We must show them that attacking Earth carries consequences they cannot afford." The vote was closer than it should have been, but the result was clear. Earth would go to war. Captain Jake Martinez received his new orders while standing in the wreckage of Luna City's research facility. He had been promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's first interstellar battle fleet. The promotion came with resources he had never imagined and responsibilities that kept him awake at night. "Admiral Martinez," the message from Admiral Sullivan read, "You are hereby authorized to use any and all resources necessary to prepare Earth's response to the Vex threat. The shipyards of Europa, Mars, and Luna are at your disposal. You have 60 days to assemble a fleet capable of taking the war to the enemy." Jake looked around at the destruction the Vex had left behind. Scorch marks on the walls showed where people had tried to run. Bloodstains marked where they had fallen. This was what the Vex thought of human neutrality, of human lives, of human dignity. Dr. Amy Rodriguez approached him through the rubble, carrying a data pad with her final analysis of the alien technology fragment Ben had been studying before his death. Her face was pale but determined, her grief transformed into something harder and more dangerous. "Admiral, you need to see this," she said, holding out the data pad. "Ben's final research on that energy fragment. We know what it is now." Jake took the pad and read through the technical data. Even with his limited scientific background, he could understand the implications. The fragment was from a Vex weapons test, something far more powerful than anything they had used in the Galactic War. They were developing new technologies specifically for fighting humans. "How long before they can deploy these weapons?" Jake asked. "Based on the energy decay patterns, this fragment is about 6 months old," Amy replied. "If they're following standard development protocols, they could have working weapons within another 6 months, maybe less." Jake felt a cold determination settle over him. The Vex were planning to use Earth as a testing ground for their new weapons. They saw humans as laboratory animals to be experimented on and discarded. That mistake would cost them everything. The shipyards of Europa had been built to construct commercial vessels and research stations. In the weeks following the Luna City attack, they were transformed into military production facilities working around the clock. Engineers who had spent their careers designing peaceful exploration ships were now creating weapons of war. Chief Engineer Paula Martinez was Jake's younger sister, a brilliant woman who had chosen the quiet life of a civilian engineer over the military career their father had wanted for both his children. The Vex attack had changed her mind about the value of quiet lives. "The new Terra will be ready ahead of schedule," she reported to Jake during one of his inspection visits. "We've incorporated every piece of alien technology we've been able to reverse engineer over the past 2 centuries. Shield harmonics that can deflect most known energy weapons, kinetic barriers that can stop projectiles moving at near light speed, and weapons systems that will surprise anyone who thinks they know human capabilities." Jake walked through the construction bay where his new flagship was taking shape. The new Terra was larger than any ship Earth had ever built, a kilometer of metal and technology designed for one purpose. It would carry his flag into battle against an enemy that had never faced human warfare. "What about the fighter squadrons?" Jake asked. "Commander Johnson is training pilots on Mars," Paula replied. "His people are good, Admiral, really good. They're learning to fly ships that can do things no other species has ever thought to try. Fast, agile, unpredictable. The Vex are going to hate fighting them." Nick Johnson had been Earth's best test pilot before the war began. Now he commanded the first human spacefighter wing, training young pilots to fight in 3-dimensional combat among the stars. His fighters were small and quick, designed to swarm larger enemy ships like insects attacking a much larger predator. The training took place in the asteroid fields around Mars, where pilots learned to use every piece of debris as cover and every gravitational field as a weapon. Johnson pushed his people hard because he knew their lives would depend on being better than anyone expected them to be. "Remember," he told his pilots during their final briefing before deployment, "the enemy thinks we're primitives playing with technology we don't understand. They think our ships are slow and our tactics are predictable. Show them how wrong they are." While the military prepared for war, Earth's scientists worked to understand their enemy. Dr. Rodriguez led a team analyzing every piece of Vex technology they could find, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited in battle. "The Vex rely heavily on automated systems," she reported to General Taylor. "Their ships are controlled by artificial intelligence networks that coordinate fleet movements and tactical decisions. If we can disrupt those networks, entire fleets could become disorganized." General Taylor studied the intelligence reports with the focused attention of a man whose decisions would determine whether Earth survived or fell. The Vex Empire controlled hundreds of star systems and commanded fleets that numbered in the thousands. Earth had one solar system and was building its first real battle fleet. What about ground forces? He asked Colonel Lisa Hayes, the Marine officer who would command Earth's planetary assault troops. "The Vex are physically stronger than humans, but they're not used to fighting opponents who don't follow standard galactic warfare protocols," Hayes replied. "They expect formal battles with clear lines and predictable tactics. We're training for urban warfare, guerrilla tactics, and close-quarters combat in zero gravity. They won't know how to respond." Meanwhile, the Galactic Consortium had quietly approached Earth with an offer of alliance. Admiral Kethra arrived at Terra Shield Station in a small diplomatic vessel carrying proposals for mutual assistance and shared intelligence. "The Vex have made a mistake," the Saurian admiral told Jake during their private meeting. "They have awakened a sleeping giant. My people have fought them for decades, and we know their strengths and weaknesses. Combined with human innovation and determination, we could end this war." Jake considered the offer carefully. Earth had the ships and the will to fight, but they lacked experience in galactic warfare. The consortium had that experience but lacked the resources to win the war alone. Together they might be able to defeat an enemy that neither could face successfully on their own. "What do you want in return?" Jake asked. "Nothing," Kethra replied. "The Vex must be stopped. If Earth can help us do that, the entire galaxy benefits. We seek partnership, not dominance." The alliance was formalized in secret negotiations between Ambassador White and consortium representatives. Earth would retain complete independence, while gaining access to star charts, intelligence networks, and tactical advice from species that had been fighting the Vex for generations. The hyperspace jump to the Kepler system took 18 hours, during which Admiral Jake Martinez barely slept. He spent the time reviewing tactical plans with his senior officers, studying intelligence reports about Vex capabilities, and trying not to think about the fact that he was leading humanity into its first major space battle. When the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, what they found was worse than their worst intelligence estimates. The Vex fortress was not just a staging ground for invasion. It was a massive construction facility, building ships at a rate that defied belief. Dozens of new vessels floated in various stages of completion around a central station the size of a small moon. "Admiral," reported Ryan Clark from the tactical station, "I'm reading over 200 Vex vessels in the system. 40 of them are capital ships larger than anything in our databases." Jake studied the tactical display, watching as red enemy contacts filled the screen. His 44 ships suddenly seemed very small against such overwhelming numbers. But retreat was not an option. If the Vex completed their construction project, Earth would face an invasion fleet that no amount of human determination could defeat. "Send a message to the consortium fleet," Jake ordered. "Tell Admiral Kethra that we're beginning our attack run. Request that they coordinate with our assault to maximize damage to the fortress." The consortium had arrived in the system 3 days earlier with 60 ships intending to conduct reconnaissance of the Vex buildup. They had been waiting for the human fleet to arrive before beginning their own attack, honoring the alliance agreement despite the risk to their own forces. Admiral Kethra's response came back immediately. "Human fleet, we stand ready to support your attack. May your ancestors guide your weapons and your courage inspire your enemies to flee." Jake smiled at the formal Saurian blessing. "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. We came here to send the Vex a message about attacking neutral worlds. Let's make sure they understand it clearly. Attack pattern Gamma. Take us in." The new Terra led the charge toward the Vex fortress, with Earth's smaller ships spreading into attack formation around the flagship. Commander Nick Johnson's fighter squadrons launched from their carriers, swarming ahead of the main fleet like angry hornets protecting their nest. The Vex response was immediate and massive. Energy beams lanced out from the fortress and the defending ships, creating a web of deadly light that no ship should have been able to survive. But the human ships moved differently than anything the Vex had ever fought before. Instead of the stately, predictable maneuvers favored by most galactic species, the human vessels darted and weaved through the defensive fire like birds avoiding a storm. They changed direction without warning, accelerated and decelerated at rates that should have been impossible, and seemed to ignore the basic principles of space combat that every other species followed. "Evasive pattern 7. Jake called out, as the new Terra rolled to avoid a particularly heavy energy barrage. "All forward batteries, target the fortress shield generators. Let's see if their defenses can handle concentrated human firepower." Chief Engineer Paula Martinez monitored the ship's systems from the engineering deck, rerouting power and adjusting shield harmonics to keep the new Terra fighting despite taking hits that would have destroyed any other vessel. The ship she had designed was proving its worth in battle, using technology that the Vex could not understand or counter effectively. "Admiral, forward shields down to 60%, she reported over the communication system. "But their energy weapons are having trouble maintaining target locks. Our evasive patterns are working better than projected." Commander Johnson's fighters were causing chaos throughout the Vex formation. The small, agile craft were too fast for the enemy's heavy weapons to track effectively, and too numerous for their point defense systems to stop. Johnson's pilots had trained in the asteroid fields around Mars, learning to use every available piece of cover and every gravitational anomaly as a tactical advantage. "Blue Squadron, follow me in on the capital ship bearing 27 Mark IV, Johnson ordered over the fighter communication network. "Red Squadron, take the destroyer on our starboard side. Remember your training and watch each other's backs." The human fighters swarmed the Vex capital ship like insects attacking a much larger predator. They targeted weapon systems, shield, generators and communication arrays with surgical precision, using tactics that no galactic species had ever developed. Instead of the formal, predictable attack patterns that dominated space warfare, the humans fought like they were still flying atmospheric aircraft, using three-dimensional movement and split-second timing to survive against impossible odds. The Vex crews had no idea how to respond to such unconventional tactics. Their training and experience were based on fighting opponents who followed established rules of engagement. The humans ignored those rules completely, creating their own methods of warfare that turned every assumption about space combat upside down. Colonel Lisa Hayes led the first boarding action of the war when her Marines assaulted a damaged Vex destroyer that had lost its main shields. The assault shuttles attached to the enemy hull like limpets, cutting through the armor with focused energy beams, while the Marines prepared for close-quarters combat. "Remember, these things are stronger than us physically," Hayes told her troops, over the tactical communication network. "But they're not used to fighting humans. Use your speed, use your intelligence, and never give them time to think. Hit them hard and fast and don't stop moving." The Marines poured through the breach in the Vex hull, moving through the alien corridors with the fluid precision of predators hunting prey. The Vex soldiers were expecting a formal boarding action, with clear battle lines and predictable advances. Instead, they faced human soldiers who used every corner, every piece of debris, and every environmental advantage to maximum effect. The battle for the destroyer lasted only 20 minutes, but it established human Marines as a force to be feared throughout the galaxy. Hayes and her troops fought with a ferocity that shocked even hardened Vex warriors, using close-quarters combat techniques that no other species had developed. But despite their early successes, the human fleet was still vastly outnumbered. For every Vex ship they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The fortress itself remained largely undamaged, its massive shields deflecting even the heaviest human weapons. "Admiral, we're taking heavy casualties," reported Ryan Clark. "3 destroyers lost and the carrier Yorktown is dead in space. We can't sustain this level of losses much longer." Jake watched the tactical display with growing concern. His fleet was fighting brilliantly, using tactics and technologies that gave them significant advantages over their enemies, but numbers were numbers, and the Vex had too many ships for even human innovation to overcome. That was when Dr. Amy Rodriguez made the discovery that changed everything. "Admiral, I've been monitoring Vex communication patterns during the battle," she called from the science station. "They're using a centralized command system. Every ship in their fleet receives orders from a single command vessel. If we can destroy that ship, their entire formation will lose coordination." Jake looked at the tactical display with new eyes, searching for patterns in the enemy movements. After several minutes, he found what he was looking for. One ship, larger than the others, remained in the center of the Vex formation while issuing a constant stream of communication signals to the rest of the fleet. "That's our target," Jake announced. "All ships new priority target. The command vessel bearing 187 Mark 12. If we take that ship out, we break their entire formation. But the command vessel was protected by layers of defensive ships and the strongest shields in the Vex fleet. Reaching it would require a direct assault through the heart of the enemy formation, a move that would likely be suicide for any ship that attempted it." "Admiral," Paula Martinez called from engineering, "if we reroute all power from life support and secondary systems to the forward shields, we might be able to punch through their defensive line, but it would be a one-way trip. We wouldn't have enough power left to retreat." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These were people who had joined Earth's space service, expecting to patrol peaceful trade routes and explore distant stars. Now they were being asked to sacrifice their lives in humanity's first space battle. Every face he saw showed the same determination, the same willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect Earth. "Do it," Jake ordered. "All power to forward. Shields and engines. Plot a course directly through their formation to the command ship. The new Terra began its desperate charge toward the heart of the Vex fleet, with the surviving human ships following close behind. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles filled space around them, but Paula's shield modifications held against the massive firepower directed at them. Commander Johnson's remaining fighters formed a protective screen around the capital ships, sacrificing themselves to protect the larger vessels. Johnson himself led the final attack, his fighters screaming through a gap in the Vex defensive line to deliver a precise strike against the command ship's shield generators. Admiral Jake Martinez woke up in the medical bay of the new Terra 3 days after the Battle of Kepler Station. His head felt like it had been split open with an axe, and his left arm was encased in medical regeneration equipment that hummed quietly as it worked to repair the damage from flying debris that had nearly killed him. Dr. Amy Rodriguez sat beside his bed, reading reports on a datapad. When she saw him wake up, her face showed relief mixed with exhaustion. She had been commanding the fleet while he recovered, a responsibility she had never wanted and hoped never to face again. "How long was I out?" Jake asked, his voice rough. "From the medical treatments." 3 days, Amy replied. "Long enough for the Vex to make it clear that Kepler was just the opening act. They're coming for Earth, Jake. 500 ships, including some vessels we've never seen before. They'll be here in 4 days. Jake struggled to sit up, ignoring the protests from his medical monitors. "What's our status? How many ships do we have left?" 31 combat vessels, plus whatever Admiral Sullivan has been able to scrape together from the system defense forces, Amy said. "The good news is that President Morrison has authorized the Fortress Protocol. Every orbital, platform, asteroid mining station, and deep space facility is being converted into a weapons platform. The Fortress Protocol had been developed years earlier as Earth's ultimate defensive strategy. Instead of trying to meet an invasion fleet in open space, Earth would turn the entire solar system into a maze of defensive positions, using every available resource to create layers of resistance that would exhaust any attacking force. "What about the consortium?" Jake asked. "Admiral Kethra is bringing everything he can spare, but most of his fleet is tied up defending consortium worlds from other Vex attacks. We're looking at maybe 20 ships from our allies." Jake did the math in his head and did not like the result. 51 defending ships against 500 attackers was not a battle. It was a massacre. But Earth had faced impossible odds before and found ways to survive. This time would be no different. "Help me get to the bridge," Jake said, pushing aside the medical equipment. "I need to see what we're working with," Dr. Rodriguez protested, but she knew better than to argue with him when he had that particular look in his eyes. Jake Martinez had brought humanity this far, and he would see the war through to its conclusion regardless of what the doctors said about his injuries. The bridge of the new Terra had been repaired during the 3 days Jake had been unconscious, but scorch marks on the walls showed where enemy fire had penetrated their defenses. Ryan Clark looked up from the tactical station with relief when Jake appeared, though he was careful not to mention how pale and unsteady the Admiral looked. "Admiral, welcome back," Ryan said. "We've been monitoring the Vex approach. They're making no attempt at stealth or surprise. They want us to know they're coming." Jake studied the tactical displays showing the approaching enemy fleet. The Vex formation was impressive in its size and organization, but it was also predictable. They were approaching Earth like a sledgehammer aimed at a nail, using overwhelming force rather than tactical cleverness. "Have they made any communication attempts?" Jake asked. "Nothing," Lisa Brooks reported from the communications station. "They're maintaining complete radio silence, but we've been intercepting their internal communications. They're calling this operation Final Solution. They don't plan to leave any humans alive." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. The Vex were not coming to conquer Earth or force humanity into submission. They were coming to commit genocide, to eliminate an entire species because they had proven to be inconveniently effective at warfare. "Then we'll give them a fight they'll never forget," Jake said. "Even if we don't survive it. On Earth's surface, President Morrison addressed the world from the Emergency Command Center deep beneath the Swiss mountains. His words were broadcast to every human settlement in the solar system, from the great cities of Earth to the smallest research stations on the outer planets. "My fellow humans," Morrison began, "we face the darkest hour in our species' history. An enemy that seeks our complete destruction is approaching our home with overwhelming force. But we are not the same species that first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. We have learned to travel between worlds, to build cities among the stars, and to defend ourselves against those who would harm us." The president's speech was interrupted by reports from the outer system. Long-range sensors had detected the first Vex scouts entering the solar system's edge, moving ahead of the main fleet to probe Earth's defenses. General Chris Taylor coordinated the system-wide defense from his command post on Mars. Every asteroid mining station in the belt had been equipped with weapons and shields. Every orbital platform around Earth had been turned into a fortress. Even the civilian cargo ships had been armed and prepared to fight. "Remember," Taylor told his commanders during the final briefing, "we don't have to destroy their entire fleet. We just have to make the cost of victory higher than they're willing to pay. Make every kilometer of space they travel cost them ships and lives." Commander Nick Johnson, promoted to lead all fighter operations after his heroic sacrifice had been exaggerated in the official reports, deployed his squadrons throughout the asteroid belt. His pilots would use the rocky debris as cover, striking at the Vex fleet and disappearing before the enemy could respond effectively. "We're not trying to fight fair," Johnson told his pilots. "We're trying to win. Use every dirty trick you can think of. Hide behind asteroids. Use solar radiation to mask your approach and never give them a clean shot at you." Colonel Lisa Hayes had also survived the Kepler battle, though she bore scars from her fight with the Vex fleet commander. She now commanded all of Earth's marine forces, preparing for boarding actions and the defense of key installations. "The Vex think they know how humans fight because they've seen one battle," Hayes told her troops. "They're about to learn that we're just getting started." Dr. Rodriguez had made a discovery that could change the course of the battle. While analyzing the quantum energy signatures they had detected months earlier, she had found a way to disrupt Vex communication networks on a massive scale. "We can't build enough quantum scramblers to affect their entire fleet," she explained to Jake during a planning session. "But if we can deploy them at key points throughout the solar system, we can force the Vex to rely on short-range communications only. That will break up their coordinated attacks." The quantum scramblers were rushed into production on every available facility, from the shipyards of Europa to the manufacturing centers of the asteroid belt. They were not elegant weapons, but they would serve their purpose of leveling the playing field between human determination and Vex technology. When the main Vex fleet entered the solar system, they found resistance waiting at every turn. They saw outer planets had been turned into fortified positions bristling with weapons. The asteroid belt had become a three-dimensional minefield where human fighters lurked behind every piece of rocky debris. Emperor Zarthok commanded the Vex fleet from his massive dreadnought, a ship larger than anything humanity had ever constructed. He had expected Earth's defenses to collapse quickly under the weight of his overwhelming numerical superiority. Instead, he found himself fighting a running battle through every kilometer of space between the outer planets and Earth itself. "These humans fight like animals," Zarthak told his subordinates as reports of losses poured in from throughout the fleet. "They have no honor, no respect for the proper conduct of warfare. They hide behind debris and strike from ambush like cowards." But Zarthak's complaints could not change the reality of the situation. Human tactics were proving devastatingly effective against Vex formations that had been designed to fight conventional opponents. Every asteroid concealed potential ambushes. Every debris field could hide weapons platforms that would emerge to fire a few shots before disappearing again. The quantum scramblers deployed throughout the system made coordination between Vex ships nearly impossible. Fleet commanders found themselves fighting isolated actions instead of coordinated battles, exactly what the human defenders had planned. As the Vex fleet fought its way toward Earth, Admiral Martinez prepared for the final confrontation. The New Terra and the surviving ships of Earth's fleet waited in orbit around their home world, ready for one last, desperate battle. "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez," Jake announced over the fleet communication network. "The enemy is coming to destroy everything we have ever cared about. Our families, our homes, our future as a species. We cannot let them pass. We will not let them pass. Earth stands here, and here we make our final stand." The battle for Earth began when the first Vex ships broke through the outer defenses and approached the planet itself. What they found waiting was not a small fleet of defenders, but an entire world transformed into a weapon. Every orbital platform fired simultaneously, creating a wall of energy that lit up space like a miniature star. The Vex had expected to face Earth's military forces. They had not expected to fight an entire planet whose population had decided that survival was worth any sacrifice.